She fell asleep on the shoulder of a man everyone in that room wanted dead. Listen, K-fam. Simone Carter is 27, a waitress, black, beautiful, working a double shift at Carter's Table, the little restaurant her late mother left her, a gold pin with her name, her mother's watch on her wrist, and a recovery notice from Murray Asset giving her 12 days to pay what she cannot pay, or lose everything. That night, she covers a banquet at the Hotel Hanel, 2 identical signs after a renovation. She walks into the wrong room, the Mugungwa room. One man sits alone at the head of the table, Kang Min-jae. They call him the Quiet One. 30 years old, shoulders like a wall, a dark dragon tattoo climbing the left side of his neck, disappearing under a crisp white collar, a luxury watch, cold, dark eyes. Exhausted, unfed, she sinks onto his shoulder and sleeps, Omo, in front of everyone. Then the advisors walk in to vote him out, and this silent man grips one of them by the wrist, lifts a single finger, and stops the whole meeting. 12 days. A suspended vote. A tired waitress who recognizes a face she was never supposed to remember. IU, K-fam, and what happens after that door closes. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click Join to become a member and help our channel. The plate came back full, and Simone caught it before it hit the floor. Table 9 had sent back the short rib for the second time. Too fatty, the man said, waving a hand like he was shooing a fly, and Simone smiled the smile she kept in a drawer behind her teeth and said, "Of course, sir, right away." She carried the plate through the swinging door into the kitchen and set it on the pass without a sound. Her feet had stopped being feet 3 hours ago. Now they were just the 2 things at the bottom of her that hurt. "Second time," said the line cook. "He's bored," Simone said. "Bored people send food back." She refilled her water tray, wiped her hands on the white apron, and went back out into the dining room of Carter's Table, like nothing in the world was pressing on her chest. Nothing was pressing on her chest, except everything. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays were slow, and slow was worse than busy, because slow meant she had time to do the math. And she had been doing the math since 4 that morning, when the envelope came under the door with the little cellophane window, the kind of window that shows you a number before you're ready to see it. She had been the one to open. She was always the one to open. 4:15, keys cold in her hand, the smell of last night's grease still hanging in the dark, and the envelope was already there on the mat, like it had let itself in. She'd stepped over it twice, made the coffee, turned on the ovens, started the stock. Then she'd picked it up. You could only step over a thing so long before it started stepping over you. She'd worked the breakfast rush on it, worked the lunch on it. Now she was working the dinner, and the envelope sat in the drawer in the back and did its quiet arithmetic against her all day, subtracting. At table 2, an old couple had been coming in every Tuesday for 9 years. They'd had their first date at Carter's Table. Evelyn used to seat them at the same booth, and the woman still ordered the fried catfish, and the man still pretended to want something new, and still ended up with the catfish too. Simone brought their coffee before they asked. The woman touched her wrist. "Your mama would be so proud of you, baby." Simone said thank you and moved on fast, before the kindness could open anything she needed to keep shut for 6 more hours. Table 4 wanted more bread. Table 7 wanted the check. Simone moved between them like water finds the low places, quick, quiet, folding herself around every need in the room. Her mother had taught her that. "You don't serve people food," Evelyn used to say. "You serve them the feeling of being taken care of. The food is just how you carry it." Evelyn had been gone 14 months. 14 months and the restaurant still ran on her, the way a house stays warm an hour after the fire's out. The regulars still asked for the peach cobbler the way Miss Evelyn made it. Simone made it now. Same recipe, same pan, and they said it was close, real close, and they meant it kind, but she heard the close. She heard the gap between close and hers. The debt was Evelyn's too, in a way. Not a secret her mother kept to shame, a wound she'd taken standing up. When the diagnosis came, Evelyn had borrowed against the restaurant to cover what the insurance wouldn't, and she'd borrowed from a company that lent easy and collected hard, and she'd meant to pay it back the way she paid back everything, slow and stubborn and to the penny. Then the cancer moved faster than the payments, and the note got sold and sold again, until it landed with people who had never wanted the money at all. They wanted the corner. They wanted the address. Simone dropped the check at 7, thanked them, cleared the bread baskets, and on her way back to the kitchen, she let her eyes touch the photograph by the register. Her mother, copper dress, white apron, gold earrings, standing in the doorway of this same restaurant on opening day, back when the sign out front still smelled of paint. 22 years that sign had hung there. 22 years of somebody's anniversary, somebody's first date, somebody's last good meal before the chemo started. 12 days. That was the other number. The number under the cellophane window said one thing, and the letter behind it said another, and the two numbers together said 12 days, and then it's not yours anymore. Simone. Malik was at the swinging door with his backpack still on one shoulder, glasses fogged from the cold outside. You seen the... He stopped. He looked at her face and he knew. Malik always knew. It came, didn't it? Go home, Malik. Your shift ended an hour ago. I did the numbers again last night, he said, lowering his voice, stepping in close so table 7 couldn't hear. If we cut the Sunday brunch and I stop taking the delivery pay. You're not stopping your pay. Simone. You're 29 years old and you live in a room the size of this, she said, and she tapped the tray. You're not stopping your pay. He pushed his glasses up. He wanted to argue. She watched him decide not to, and she loved him a little for both the wanting and the not. Malik had come to Carter's table 2 years ago as a busboy who could barely carry 4 plates, a kid from the neighborhood with a laptop in his backpack, and a head full of numbers nobody had ever asked him to use. Evelyn had asked him. Evelyn put him on the books, taught him the ordering, let him build his little spreadsheets that tracked which nights lost money and which nights carried the week. He'd loved her mother the way people loved her mother, which was completely, without a plan for what to do when she was gone. Where is it? He asked instead. She didn't answer. She went to the back, to the little office that was really a closet with a desk in it, and she opened the drawer and took out the envelope. Murray Asset Recovery, it said across the top, in a font that had been chosen by someone whose job was to make people feel small. She'd read it 11 times. She read it a 12th. The installment they were demanding wasn't a payment. It was a wall. It was a number designed so that no waitress, no daughter, no woman standing in a closet in the back of a restaurant at 9 at night could ever climb it. Pay this, in full, in 12 days, or the property known as Carter's Table reverts to the holder of the note. The holder of the note. Somewhere out there was a man who had never smelled her mother's short rib, and he owned the smell of it anyway. Malik had followed her back. He stood in the doorway. There's a banquet Thursday, he said. The Hanul. They're short. Manager called me because you didn't pick up. Simone put the envelope back in the drawer. Slow, careful, like it was sleeping. How short? Real short. Big private event. Top floor. They need floaters who won't drop anything. It's cash. Same night, if you can stay till the last plate clears. She did the math again. She was always doing the math. The banquet money wouldn't touch the wall. Nothing touched the wall, but it would keep the lights on another week, and a woman with a week could find a way, and a woman without one couldn't. She had learned that difference in her body over the last 14 months. "Tell them yes," she said. "You worked a double today." "Tell them yes, Malik." He held her eyes one more second, then he nodded, and he went, and the little bell over the front door said goodbye for him. Simone stayed in the closet a minute longer. She took off her watch. Her mother's watch, plain face, thin band, the second hand that had a little hitch in it, catching at the 11 every time it came around, like it wanted to stop and think before it kept going. Evelyn wore it every shift for 20 years. It had stopped twice, and she'd had it fixed twice, because you don't throw away a thing that's carried you, she said. You fix it, you wear it, you let it keep your time. Simone turned it over. On the back, worn almost smooth, 3 letters, E.C., Evelyn Carter. Her thumb found them without looking. She remembered the last shift her mother worked. Nobody knew it was the last one, which was its own small mercy. Evelyn had come in weak, thin under the copper dress, and she'd tied on the apron anyway, and pinned the watch over her heart anyway, and worked the floor for 3 hours before Simone made her sit down. And even sitting, she ran the room, calling times, reading customers, telling Simone with one look which table needed a second and which needed to be left alone. That was the job, not the trays, the seeing. Toward the end, Evelyn had reached up, unpinned the watch, and pressed it into Simone's hand. "Keep my time," she'd said, and smiled like it was nothing, like she was handing over a set of keys. Simone had thought she meant just for the shift. Then she pinned the watch to the inside of her apron, over her heart, the way her mother had done on the loud nights, so it wouldn't catch on a tray, so it would stay close, so the woman wearing it could feel the tick against her ribs when the room got too heavy. 12 days, Simone said, to the watch, to the closet, to no one. The second hand hitched at the 11, then it kept going. She closed up alone. She always closed up alone now. She wiped down the tables in the order her mother had taught her, back to front, so you never had to walk across clean floor. She counted the drawer twice. She wrapped the last of the cobbler and set it in the case for tomorrow, and she stacked the chairs, and she killed the lights 1 row at a time, and stood for a moment in the dark of the dining room where 22 years of people had been made to feel taken care of. The street light came through the front window and lay across the floor in a long, pale rectangle, and in the middle of it, faint, she could almost see her mother crossing the room with a coffee pot in each hand, laughing at something a customer said, her earrings catching the light. Simone locked the door behind her. The cold took her at the collar, and she pulled her coat tight and started walking, because the walking was cheaper than the train, and every dollar was a brick, and she needed all her bricks now. 40 blocks. She knew them all by heart: the shuttered laundromat, the church with the crooked cross, the corner where the fruit man set up before dawn. She walked them the way you pray a thing you've stopped believing in, out of habit, out of the small comfort of the doing. Somewhere in those 40 blocks, she stopped being a woman losing her mother's restaurant and became just a woman walking, tired feet, cold hands, breath in front of her face, and that was almost a rest. Almost. The letter walked with her. 12 days walked with her, 1 block shorter every step. Thursday came the way bad money weeks come, fast where you want them slow. The Hotel Hanul stood 40 floors over the river, glass and steel, a building that had never once in its life had to do the math. Simone had passed it 100 times and never gone in. From the street, it looked less like a place people slept and more like something that had landed, cold and perfect, and decided to stay. She came in through the service entrance at the back, past the loading dock, past the men unloading crates of orchids that cost more than her rent, and a floor manager with a clipboard and a headset looked her up and down and decided she'd do. You floated banquets before? 6 years. Good. Top floors tonight. We renovated the East Wing last month. Half the rooms got new names. The temp signs aren't all up yet. So watch the numbers, not the names. You get lost, you ask. You do not wander. He said it like she was a child. She smiled the drawer smile. You're on the banquet in the Magnolia Room. Big party, private. You serve, you clear, you stay invisible. These are not people who want to see the help. Understand? Understand. They put her in a fresh apron and pinned a temporary badge to it, and for a second she panicked because she thought she'd have to take off her own apron, her mother's watch with it, but they let her wear it underneath, and she felt the small tick against her ribs and breathed. Somebody handed her a printed floor plan she didn't have time to read, and a headset she didn't know how to work, and pushed her toward the pass, and she went, because going was the only direction the night allowed. The kitchen on the 40th floor was a machine. 40 cooks, 100 plates a minute, a head chef screaming times in Korean over a sound like a war. Simone found her station, found her tray, found the rhythm inside the chaos the way she always did. Because chaos has a rhythm if you've been poor long enough to need one. The plates coming out weren't food the way she knew food. They were built, tweezered, painted, little architectures of things she couldn't name, and a runner told her one course alone cost more than she cleared in a night, and said it proud, like the number was his. Simone nodded and kept her face flat. She thought of the cobbler in the case 40 floors down. She thought of the old woman's hand on her wrist. She did not let herself do the math on what one of these plates would take off the wall, because that math had no bottom and she needed her feet under her. She hadn't eaten since morning. She'd meant to. There'd been a granola bar in her coat, and she'd given it to a man on the walk over, a man on the corner with a cardboard sign, and her mother's exact tired eyes, and she'd handed it to him without deciding to, the way you breathe without deciding to. So now there was nothing in her but coffee and the long day, and the floor tilted a half degree every time she stood up too fast. She wasn't sorry about the granola bar. That was the thing Evelyn had built into her so deep she couldn't dig it out if she tried. You feed the hungry one in front of you. You worry about your own hunger after. It had never once been the smart way to live. It was just the only way she knew, and it had cost her, over and over, and she kept paying it, because the day she stopped would be the day she stopped being her mother's daughter. A cook shoved a tray of canapés past her and barked something, and she flattened against the steel counter to let him through. Steam, shouting, the clatter of 100 plates finding 100 hands. She caught her balance on the edge of the counter and waited for the room to hold still, and it half did. Floaters, listen. The floor manager clapped twice. Magnolia party's running late. They pushed 30 minutes. You, he pointed at Simone, and you two, hold your trays, wait for my call. Do not go in early. Rich people hate early almost as much as they hate late. So she waited. She stood against the wall with a tray of champagne going warm in her hands, and she waited. And the waiting was the enemy, because the waiting let her body remember how tired it was. Her eyes went heavy. She pinched the inside of her own arm to keep them open. Somewhere down the hall a door opened, and a wall of noise came out. Laughter, glasses, a language she didn't speak, wrapped around a wealth she couldn't imagine, and then the door swung shut and took the noise with it. The other two floaters had drifted off down the corridor, whispering, checking phones. Simone stayed put. She'd learned young that the ones who wandered were the ones who got blamed, and she couldn't afford blame tonight. Tonight blame was cash she didn't take home. She held her tray level and let her weight settle into the wall behind her and thought, just for a second, about sitting down. Just for a second. There was a chair against the far wall, and it was the most beautiful chair she had ever seen, and she made herself not look at it. Behind her ribs the watch ticked. She timed her breathing to it. In on the tick, out on the tick. The little hitch at the 11, a place to rest her mind. It was the closest thing to sleep a standing body could get. Her chin dipped. She caught it, straightened. Somewhere, a long way off, the head chef was still screaming times, and the sound came to her soft now, underwater, like the whole floor had been dropped in warm water and she was sinking through it, slow, toward the bottom where it was quiet. She pinched her arm again, harder this time. The pain came late and small and didn't quite reach her. The temp signs. She looked down the corridor. Little printed cards in little brass frames, all identical, all the same cream stock, and she read them the way the manager said, the numbers, not the names, but her eyes were doing the thing where the letters swam. Magnolia, Mugungwa. The two words sat next to each other on two identical cards outside two identical doors, and they started with the same shape, and Simone's tired eyes slid off one and onto the other, and could not have told you, under oath, which was which. Simone. The headset voice, in her ear now. They'd clipped her one. Magnolia's calling for the first pour. Go. Left side. Quiet. You know the drill. She pushed off the wall, and the floor tilted its half-degree, and she wrote it out the way she'd written out every long night since her mother stopped being able to work them. The two cards sat side by side down the corridor. Magnolia, Mugungwa. Same cream stock, same brass frame, the same soft rounded shape at the front of each word, and her eyes, running on coffee and nothing, slid from one to the other and back, and could not swear, under any oath, which door held the party, and which held the quiet. Watch the numbers, not the names, the man had said. But there were no numbers on the temp cards, only the two names, twinned, waiting. Simone lifted the tray, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the doors. The door on the left gave first, and Simone went through it. Champagne flutes chimed on the tray. She caught the sound before it climbed, steadied her wrist, kept the glasses upright. 6 years taught her hands that. Her eyes were another story. The room swallowed the light around her and gave almost none back. Dark wood, one long table, a ceiling that ate its own shadows. No banquet. The Magnolia had 80 covers, and a string quartet, and a floor manager barking about the shrimp tower. This room had none of it. This room had 10 chairs, and 9 of them empty, and a hush so thick it pressed on her ears like water. She stopped 2 steps in, the doors sighed shut behind her. At the far end of the table, a man sat alone. He had a glass in front of him, untouched, and both forearms flat on the wood, sleeves folded back, white shirt pulled tight across shoulders that did not belong at a desk. A dragon ran up the left of his throat, dark ink curling out from under the collar toward his ear. He was looking at nothing. He was looking at the door she'd come through. He was looking at her. Simone's training filled the silence for her. Champagne, sir. Her own voice sounded small in that box of wood. The man watched her cross the room. He didn't wave her off. He didn't invite her closer. He simply let her come, the way you let weather come. And when she reached his elbow, she set a flute down at his right hand, and the tick of her mother's watch, pinned inside the apron over her heart, filled the space between them like a second pulse. He glanced at the glass, then back at her face. "You're not one of CO's," he said, low, even, a voice that never had to be raised because rooms went quiet on their own around it. She had no idea who CO was. "Floater, sir, from the kitchen upstairs." Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, the memory of where one would go. "Sit," he said. The word made no sense. Floaters didn't sit. Floaters stood against walls until their calves went numb, and then stood some more. She stayed on her feet, tray against her hip, and the room tilted a half-degree the way rooms had been tilting on her since noon, since the granola bar she gave away, since the 40 blocks, since 4:15 and the envelope on the door. "I'm fine standing, sir." "You're swaying." She was. She locked her knees, and the locking made it worse. He pushed the chair beside him out with 2 fingers. "Wood scraped stone. Sit before you fall. Falling wakes people." There was nobody in the room to wake. 9 empty chairs, but her body heard permission and betrayed her before her pride could vote. She lowered herself onto the edge of the seat, tray in her lap, spine straight as the pin over her heart, and told herself it was for 1 breath. 1. She'd count by the watch. Tick. The second hand catching at the 11 the way it always caught. A little hitch, a little stumble, then on. Tick. The wood was warm where his arm had been. Tick. She meant to stand at 10. She didn't reach 10. Her chin dropped. Her shoulder found something solid and warm, and she leaned into it, the way a body leans into the first solid thing after a day, with no floor under it. The tray slid on her knees. His free hand caught it flat, silent, before a single glass could tip. He set it on the table without looking at it. Kang Min-jae sat still with a stranger's head on his shoulder and let his arm stay exactly where it was. The weight of her was nothing. A coat on a hook weighed more. And still it changed the arithmetic of the chair, because a man cannot rise fast with a sleeping woman folded against him, and rising fast was the one thing this room would read as fear. So he sat. He turned it over the way he turned everything over, slow from every side, and found that the accident in his lap was already a decision he hadn't made yet. He had come to this room to lose everything on schedule. He knew the shape of the next hour the way a man knows the weight of his own coat. The chairs would fill, the advisors would file in with their soft shoes and their softer voices, his father's men wearing his father's patience like cologne, and they would open the book and read the motion, and the motion would carry, because the votes were counted before anyone sat down. He had come to watch it happen with his hands flat on the table, so no one could say the quiet one flinched. He had not planned on a waitress asleep against his neck. Her breathing had gone slow. Under the champagne and the kitchen grease, he could smell the plain soap on her collar, and something older, iron and warm, that took him a second to place as blood warmth, exhaustion cooked down to the bone. He'd seen men fall like this in the back of cars after long nights. He had never seen anyone do it in this room. This room did not let people rest. That was its entire purpose. Tick. He heard it now, too. A small mechanical stutter coming off her chest. A watch that wasn't keeping perfect time, and wasn't being replaced. He looked at the black shoes, scuffed at the toe and polished over the scuff. At the apron, laundered thin. At the gold pin, not the hotel's, her own, a name. Simone. He had spent his whole life in rooms that took. Rooms like this one, built to move a signature or a body or a piece of land from one column to another, while everyone kept their voices soft. He had watched his father empty a man in a room this size without ever raising a hand, only a number, only a weight. And here was a woman who had walked into the machine by accident, carrying a watch that stuttered and shoes that had been polished over their own wounds, and the machine had put her to sleep instead of eating her, and he found that he minded, in a small cold place he rarely visited, whether it ate her next. He didn't examine the feeling, he filed it. That was the other thing his father had taught him, the one lesson he'd kept. The doors opened. They came in the way they always came in, without knocking, because knocking admitted the room belonged to someone. 3 of them first, then 2 more. Ao Taiwan led, glasses catching the low light. a leather case in his hand with the weight of 2 phones in it, and behind him, the others arranged themselves along the far side of the table, like a jury that had already deliberated. Seo saw the woman against Min Jae's shoulder and stopped. For one beat, nobody spoke. The advisors looked at the sleeping waitress, and then at Min Jae, and a small, ugly calculation ran behind 6 pairs of eyes at once. A weakness, a scandal, a lever. "Kong," Seo said. He set the case down. He kept his voice pleasant, which was how you knew it wasn't. "We'll wait while you send your guest away." Min Jae's arm did not move from under her head. "Sit down," he said. They sat. Habit sat them before thought could object. Then Seo caught himself standing again, halfway, because the order had come from the man they'd arrived to unseat, and his knees had obeyed anyway. Across the table, a heavy-set advisor named Ha reached for the ledger at the table's center, the black book with the meeting's business in it, and slid it toward himself to open. His father's ally, his father's hand wearing another man's rings. "We should begin," Ha said. "The hour's set. The motion stands whether the boy plays house or not." He opened the cover. Min Jae moved then, only his right hand. It crossed the 6 inches of wood between them without hurry, and closed around Ha's wrist just above the ring, and it closed the way a door closes on a vault. No violence in it, only fact. Ha's fingers stopped on the page. The book stayed half open. Nobody had seen Min Jae's arm travel. It was simply there, and Ha's hand was simply not turning the page anymore. "Don't," Min Jae said. One word, pitched under the sleeping woman's breath so it wouldn't reach her. Ha's face went from surprise to insult to something more careful in the space of 2 seconds, because the grip did not hurt, and that was worse than if it had. A man who grips to hurt is angry. A man who grips exactly this hard has decided something and is only telling you the number. "Let go of my hand," Ha said. "Close the book first." Seo's voice slid in smooth. "Kang, this theater. Seo." Min Jae didn't look at him. He was looking at the book. "You brought no sesame tea in a paper cup to a restaurant on Maple 3 months ago, and paid cash, and gave a name that wasn't yours. I remember faces. I remember the cup." He let that sit half a second. "Sit down, and put your hands where I can see the rings." Seo sat down. His hand found the table. The room had come here certain, and certainty was leaking out of it now, through a crack nobody could find. These men had counted the votes. The votes were still counted. Nothing had changed on paper. And every one of them felt the floor move anyway, because the quiet one was supposed to sit with his hands flat and take it, and instead, he had a hand on Ha's wrist and a stranger asleep on his shoulder, and he was not afraid, and fear was the whole machine. Fear was how the vote worked. Take the fear out, and the machine had nothing to bite. Ha tried to pull his hand back. It didn't come. The pull cost him. Everyone at the table saw it, and everyone at the table pretended not to, and the pretending was its own small surrender. A vein stood up on the back of Ha's hand. His rings pressed white lines into his own fingers, and the black book stayed frozen at the exact angle where his thumb had stopped. The cover lifted maybe an inch. The first page, a pale wedge of nothing anyone could read. "You embarrass yourself," Ha said, and his voice came out thinner than he wanted. "You embarrass your father." "My father isn't in this room." Min Jae's grip held its number. "You are. Say the motion out loud, Ha, right now, word for word, the way it's written. If you can say it in front of her, without reading it off the page, I'll let go of your hand, and I'll open the book myself." Ha's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. He had been handed the wording an hour ago in a car, and he had not memorized it, because men like Ha never expected to be asked to know the thing they were paid to raise their hand for. His silence went around the table like a dropped glass. "That's what I thought," Min-jae said. "The vote is scheduled," Ha said. "Lower now. You can hold my wrist all night. At the hour, we read the motion. Those are the rules your father wrote. My father wrote them when he could count on all of you being in the room, and none of you thinking." Min-jae's thumb pressed once. A full stop. "There's no quorum for what's in that book. Not tonight. There are 6 of us. There are 5 men who owe my father, and 1 who owes Seo, and none of you can tell me right now, out loud, in front of a witness, what the motion actually says." He tilted his head, a fraction, toward the woman on his shoulder. "She's a witness. She works upstairs. She has a name pin and a pay stub, and a boss who'll remember sending her to the wrong room. You want to open that book and read a removal into a room with a hotel employee sitting in it? Read it. I'll wait. I'll make sure she remembers every word." The book stayed half open under Ha's stopped hand. Simone stirred. The change in the air reached her before the words did. The new weight of bodies, the drop in temperature that comes when a room fills with men who don't like each other. Her eyes came open on dark wood and unfamiliar shoes, and for one blank second, she did not know the year. Then the watch ticked against her heart, and the tray was gone from her lap, and there was a shoulder under her cheek that was not a wall. She came off it fast. The chair barked on stone. "Oh, God, Sir, I'm so sorry." She was on her feet, tray already in her hands, hotel apology firing on reflex, and her eyes swept the table and found 6 men in dark suits looking at her, and one hand clamped on another hand over a black book, and every apology she knew dried up in her mouth. "I got the wrong room," she said, quieter, to no one, to the doors, the signs. "I got the wrong room." "You got the right room," Min-jae said. He said it to her, but he was watching them when he said it, and she understood, without being told, that she had just been handed something, and she didn't know what it weighed. "Go back to your floor," he went on, still even, still low. "Tell your manager you delivered to Mugunghwa by mistake and came straight back. Tell him the truth. Someone may ask you, someday, whether a meeting happened in this room tonight." His eyes moved to her then, one full second, and there was nothing warm in them, and nothing cruel either, only the flat attention of a man laying a stone he intends to build on. "Nothing happened in this room tonight. You'll remember that too." The word witness landed on her, and she felt its weight land. She was a garçonette. She carried plates. She counted a cash drawer twice at midnight and walked 40 blocks home to save the fare. And now, a man with a dragon on his throat had set her in the middle of a table full of suits, like a coin he was daring them to reach for. Her pulse climbed. The tray trembled once, and she stilled it. Wrist and glasses both, the way 6 years had taught her. She should have run. Her feet knew the way to the door. Instead she looked, one time, at the hand on the wrist, and the book caught half open, and the men who had stopped moving, and something in the architecture of it lined up with a shape she already carried, a notice on a door, a parcel that changed hands, until it landed with people who wanted an address, and not $1. Somebody in a room, deciding what belonged to someone else, while that someone else slept. "Yes, sir," she said. She set no glass down. She took the full tray. She walked to the doors on legs that had found their bones again, and she did not sway, and behind her the room held its breath. 6 men, and one, and a black book that never finished opening. At the door she stopped. Her hand was on the brass. "Table 9, she said. Min-jae looked at her. "You said you remember faces." She wasn't sure why she said it. The day had scraped something loose in her, and it came out before she could pin it back. The man with the paper cup. No sesame. He didn't tip. She pushed the door. "Some people you remember whether you want to or not." Then she was in the corridor, and the twin cards swam back at her, cream and brass, magnolia and mugungwa, the letters lining up wrong the way they had the first time. She turned right this time, counted doors, found the roar of the real banquet 3 sets down, the quartet sawing, the shrimp tower listing, the floor manager's voice cracking into her headset. Where in God's name is the champagne floater? We needed her 4 minutes ago. Coming, Simone said. Delivered to the wrong suite, came straight back. The truth, exactly the truth. She would say it again if anyone asked, and something told her someone would. Inside the dark room she'd left, Ha finally got his hand back, because Min-jae let it go the moment the doors clicked shut, and he flexed his fingers and looked at the marks that weren't there and said, "You've bought a night." One night, the vote moves to the assembly, and the assembly is 12 days, Seo said quietly, reading something behind his glasses. He had done the count already. He always did the count. By the bylaws, a suspended motion reconvenes in 12 days. 12 days, Min-jae repeated. Ha shut the black book himself now, the anger in it, and squared it on the wood as though tidiness could undo the last 10 minutes. You think you've won something. You've delayed a knife. In 12 days there's a full assembly, and a full assembly doesn't stop for a waitress on your shoulder. He stood. He worked his fingers again. Your father will hear how you spent tonight. Good, Min-jae said. Let him wonder what I know that made me smile. He picked up the champagne she'd set at his right hand, the one glass she'd actually put down, and he looked at it and didn't drink it. The number sat in the room with all of them, 12 days. He hadn't chosen it. The rules his father wrote had chosen it. But he heard it the way you hear a lock turn, and somewhere 3 floors up, a woman in a thin apron was carrying the same number against her heart, and didn't know yet that it was the same one. Get out, Min-jae told the room. All of you. Tell my father the boy played house. They went. Seo last, glasses catching the light one more time at the door, the leather case heavy with its 2 phones, and he paused the way Simone had paused, and looked back the way she had looked back. The waitress, Seo said. Which room did you say she works? I didn't. Seo smiled, thin, and left. Min-jae sat alone again at the long table, with 9 empty chairs and one that had been warm. He turned the untouched glass a quarter turn on the wood. On the ceiling, the shadows ate themselves. He could still hear it if he held still, that small stutter of a second hand, catching at some private 11, a watch that wasn't keeping perfect time and wasn't being thrown away. Table 9. No sesame. Some people you remember whether you want to or not. He set the glass down without drinking and reached for the black book Ha had never finished opening, and he turned it to face himself, and he read. The black car sat outside the Carter's table at 4 in the afternoon, and it had been sitting there for 11 minutes. Simone counted the minutes the way she counted everything now, against the tick of the watch pinned inside her apron. 11 minutes. Nobody got out. The car was long and dark, and it took up the space of 2 of the meters out front, the ones that never worked anyway. Through the front glass, she could see the shape of a driver up front, and a bigger shape in the back, still, patient. A man who had learned that waiting was a kind of pressure all by itself. She kept wiping the counter. She wiped it past clean. Malik came out of the back with a crate of collard greens against his hip, and stopped when he saw where she was looking. That's been there a while, he said. 15 minutes now. You want me to go ask? No. She set the rag down. You don't walk up to a car like that. The back door opened. 1 foot, a black shoe with a shine on it that caught the streetlight before the streetlight was even on. Then the man, unfolding, broad through the shoulders, a white shirt fit so close to the chest and the arms it looked painted on, 3 buttons open at the throat, and there, on the left side of his neck, the dark line of the dragon, sliding up from under the collar toward his ear. Simone knew him before her brain caught up to her body. Her hand found the edge of the counter. 2 more men got out of a second car she hadn't clocked. They fanned without being told, one to the door, one to the window. Suits, earpieces, the kind of men who filled a doorway on purpose. Kang Min-jae walked to the glass door of the Carter's table and put his hand on it and came in like he had a reservation. "You're a long way from the Hanrel," Simone said. "So are you," he said. "You worked the banquet and you walked home. 40 blocks. The number landed wrong in her chest. She hadn't told anybody at that hotel that. "How do you know that?" I asked the right person, the right question. He looked around the room, the 12 tables, the pressed tin ceiling her mother had loved, the photo of Evelyn by the register. He looked at it a second longer than the rest. "This is yours." "It's my mother's." "Your mother's dead." She felt Malik shift behind her, felt him set the crate down, and she put her hand back without turning, flat. "Stay." 14 months, she said. "You want a table? I got 12 of them. You want coffee? I got a pot on. You want anything else? Your friends can stand out on the sidewalk while you tell me what it is." Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, the place a smile would go. He turned his head toward the 2 men at the door, outside. The one by the window didn't like it. "Boss, outside." He didn't raise his voice. He never had to. The 2 of them stepped back onto the sidewalk and stood facing the glass, and the door swung shut, and it was Simone and Malik and the man with the dragon on his neck and the smell of collard greens and coffee. "Him too," Min-jae said, tipping his chin at Malik. "He stays." "This is private." "Then it stays private with him in the room, or you walk your private self back out to your car." She pulled a chair out from table 4, the wobbly one. She gave him the wobbly one on purpose, and set it with a scrape. "Sit down. You've been standing over people all day. It shows." He sat. The chair rocked under him. He didn't adjust it. Malik moved to the register, close, a hand near the phone, and Min-jae marked that and let it go. "You recognized my associate," Min-jae said. "At the hotel, you said table 9. Seo," she said the name and watched him check whether she should know it. "He came in here 3 months back, sat right there." She pointed to table 9, the 2 top by the window. "Ordered tea, told me no sesame, said it twice, real particular, and paid cash. Gave a name that wasn't Seo. Left no tip." She picked the rag back up because her hands wanted something. "I remember every face that stiffs me. It's a small list. He's on it. What name did he give? I don't do that." "Do what?" "Hand a man's business to another man because he showed up in a nice shirt." She looked him in the eye when she said the shirt part, and again the mouth almost moved. Min-jae leaned back, and the chair complained again. "You know what I stopped? Thursday night. In that room. I know you grabbed a man's wrist and told him to close a book. I know 6 men came to do something to you and left doing nothing." She folded the rag in half. "I know you told me nothing happened in that room. So which is it?" "Both." He set his hands flat on the table, the signet ring clicking once against the wood. "There's a vote. To take from me what my father wants back. Thursday it should have happened. It didn't. By the rules, a stopped vote reconvenes in 12 days. Full assembly. Everyone in one room. No more excuses. No more empty chairs." 12 days. The number went through her like a current, because it was her number, it was the Mireille's number, and for 1/2 second she almost said so. She didn't. She held it behind her teeth. "That's your problem," she said. "What's it got to do with my dining room?" "Because you were in that room. You're the one thing in it none of them planned for. A witness who doesn't owe my father a cent, and never heard any of their names before Thursday. He turned his palm up, an offering laid on the table. I have a proposal for you, Simone Carter. You know my name. It's on your chest. He nodded at the pin. Simone. Gold over her heart, and under it, though he couldn't see it, the watch. And it's on the deed of this building, which the Mirai Asset Recovery has filed to take in 11 days. The room went very quiet. Malik's hand left the phone. You've been in my file, Simone said. Her voice came out level, and it cost her to keep it there. I've been in a lot of files this week. He didn't look away from her. You owe a payment you can't make. Whole thing, one shot, and if you miss it, the note holder takes the building, not the money. And the note's been sold 4 times to end up somewhere it was always meant to end up. He let that sit. You know who buys a debt they don't want paid? Somebody who wants the address. Somebody who wants the block. He said it soft. This block. Every deed on it. Simone put both hands on the counter and breathed the way her mother taught her to breathe when the kitchen was on fire and the health inspector was at the door. Through the nose, count the tick. She would not let this man watch her fall down inside herself. Say the proposal, she said. I pay it. Simple, flat, like passing the salt. The whole balance, tomorrow morning, cleared. The note goes away. The Mirai goes away. You keep the building, free, today, and this conversation ends, and you never see me again, unless you want to. For a second, the wanting of it was a physical thing, a hand around her ribs. 11 days gone. Her mother's 22 years, safe. The photo by the register staying right where it was. She let herself feel exactly how much she wanted it, all the way down, so she'd know precisely what she was turning down. No, she said. Malik's head came up. Min-jae didn't blink. No, no. You understand what I said. The debt, gone, free. I heard every word. She came around the counter now, slow, and stood across the little wobbly table from him, so he had to look up. You buy this, you own this. You buy my mother's debt, and my mother's building is a thing you did for me, and the next time you want something, and there's always a next time with men who arrive in 2 cars, I'm the woman who took the gift. I know how a debt sold 4 times gets used. I'm not becoming somebody's 5th sale. Not to your father. Not to you. Something changed in his face then. Not softness. Recognition. The look of a man who'd offered money his whole life and watched it work every time. Watching it not work. Then you lose the building, he said. Maybe. In 11 days. I know how many days I've got. I count them every morning. She pulled Evelyn's watch half out of the apron, just enough that he saw the worn silver of it, the initials, then tucked it back. She didn't explain it. She let him wonder. So if you didn't come here to buy me, tell me why a man with a vote in 12 days drives 40 minutes to sit in a wobbly chair in a black woman's diner. Because you need something you can't buy. And that's the only kind of thing I've got left to sell. The silence stretched. Outside, one of the guards shifted his weight, and the glass gave the softest complaint. I need a witness, Min-jae said finally. Somebody who was in that room, and saw the vote stop, and can say so, in front of the full assembly, if it comes to that. Somebody my father can't buy, can't scare, can't call a liar because she owes him. You're the only person alive who fits that shape. And in return, you make my debt disappear. In return, I make your debt disappear. No. She said it a 3rd time and watched it cost him. Same reason. You pay it, you own the witness, and a bought witness is worth nothing in your assembly, and you know it. If I'm going to be worth anything to you, I have to walk in there owing you nothing. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat, finally, both of them at the little table now, eye to eye. So here's how it goes, if it goes. I help you, not for money, on my terms. 3 of them. You want them? He put his hands flat again. Say them. 1. She held up a finger. You never come in here with those 2 again. This is a restaurant. People eat here. Old folks, kids, a man who's been coming Sundays 9 years. Your cars park a block down, and your friends stay in them. You come in that door, you come in alone, and you tip. The mouth moved, almost all the way that time. 2. Second finger. You don't touch my debt. Not to pay it, not to buy it, not to protect it, not $1, not through a lawyer, not through a shell, not with a smile. It's mine. I lose it, or I keep it on my own feet. You put a finger on that note, and we're done, and I'll tell your assembly whatever the truth happens to be that day. His jaw shifted. That one he didn't like. That note is the reason my father wants this block. If I can't... 2, she said again, flat. Take it or the car's still warm. A long beat, and 3. 3. She held all 3 fingers up between them. You tell me the truth, not the polite truth. When I ask you a question about what's happening to my mother's building and my street and the people on it, you answer straight. Or you say, I won't tell you that. You can say that, I'll live with that. But you don't lie to my face. The day I catch you in a lie, I stop. I don't care what day of your 12 it is. I don't care what's on the table. I walk, and I take my truth with me. That's the whole deal. Those 3. He looked at her for a long time. Long enough that Malik started to move and Simone stopped him with 2 fingers off the table. You're negotiating from nothing, Minjae said. You know that. 11 days from losing everything, and you're setting terms to a man who offered to hand it back to you free. I'm negotiating from the only thing you can't get anywhere else, she said. That's not nothing, that's the whole store. He stood, the chair rocked and settled. He buttoned nothing, adjusted nothing, and for a second, he was just a very large man standing in a small room that had fed people for 22 years. And he seemed, briefly, to feel the size of it. The assembly is in 12 days, he said. Some of it will happen before then. Men will come to this block. Not mine, his. They'll come as buyers, as inspectors, as friends. You'll see them before you understand them. He reached into his shirt pocket and took out a plain card, no name, 1 number, and set it on the table by her hand, without pushing it toward her. When you see something that doesn't fit, you call. That's all. You watch, you call. You don't do anything. You don't confront anybody. You're a woman who runs a restaurant and notices who doesn't tip. Simone looked at the card. She didn't pick it up. Say the 3 back to me, she said. He almost laughed. She heard the breath of it. Alone. Hands off the note. No lies. Alone. Hands off, no lies. She picked up the card then, and she pinned it, not in her pocket, but under the corner of the register, in plain sight, where Malik could see it, and she could see it, and it wasn't a secret between them. You break one, I'm gone. First time. No warnings. I already gave you the warning. This is it. Understood. You want that coffee before you go? He stopped with his hand on the door. His men straightened on the sidewalk. And Kang Min-jae, who had walked into a rigged vote and walked it back with one hand on a man's wrist, turned around in the doorway of the Carter's table and looked at the woman who'd told him no 3 times in 15 minutes. Black, he said. No sugar. She poured it into a to-go cup because she wasn't going to make him sit, and she wasn't going to make his men wait longer. And she snapped the lid on and set it on the counter. He took it. He put a bill down next to the register. She didn't look at it until he was in the car. A 50, on a cup of coffee, and she knew exactly what the 50 was. It was the first move of a man who still thought everything was a price, and she left it there, under the card, where she'd deal with it later. The 2 cars pulled out. The block went ordinary again. A bus, a bike, the old man from Sundays walking his dog past the window like nothing in the world had bent. Malik let out the breath he'd been holding since 4 o'clock. Simone, he offered to pay it. The whole thing, gone. And you? I know what I did. 11 days. He wasn't angry. He was scared, which was worse. You had it. You had it in your hand and you gave it back. She picked up the 50 and looked at it and set it in the drawer under the till, apart, not in with the day's cash. If I let a man like that pay this off, Malik, I don't own a restaurant anymore. I owe a favor to the son of the man who's trying to take my street. She closed the drawer. Mama borrowed money one time to stay alive, and it got sold 4 times till it landed with people who want the address. I watched what one debt did to her. I'm not signing up for a bigger one dressed up as a gift. Malik looked at the card under the register, the single number, no name. And that? Watching, calling. You trust him? No, she said it plain. I trust that he needs me more than he wants to. That's different. That'll hold for about 12 days. She untied the apron, pulled it forward, and there was the watch, the small silver face, the second hand catching and jumping at the 11 the way it always did. She checked the time against the clock on the wall. They still agreed. Get the greens on. We got a dinner service. Simone? We got a dinner service, she said again. And this time it wasn't about the greens. It was about the next 11 days, and the 12 after that, and the whole long shape of the thing she'd just walked into, with her eyes open. And Malik heard all of it, and picked the crate back up. She pinned the apron shut over her heart. The card stayed under the register. The 50 stayed in the drawer, apart, waiting to be given back. And somewhere across the city, a man drank black coffee out of a paper cup in the back of a long, dark car and thought about a woman who'd said no 3 times and set 3 terms and pinned his number where anyone could see it. A woman he could not buy, which meant, for the first time in a very long time, a woman he'd have to tell the truth. Simone flipped the sign to open. The dinner rush was coming. The clock on the wall said 5, and her mother's watch, over her heart, said 5 too. And for now, for tonight, the 2 of them still kept the same time. 11 days. She wiped down table 9, where a man with a false name had once told her twice about the sesame, and she thought about how many more false names were about to walk through her door, and she made sure the salt was full, and the napkins were folded, and the coffee was hot, and she waited for them. The first man came on Saturday, and he did not order food. He took the 2-top by the window, Mesa 9, the same seat Seo had warmed 3 months back, and he asked for water and nothing else. Simone brought the water. She set it down soft. She looked at his shoes while she did it, because shoes tell you things a face won't, and these were clean in a way that didn't match the coat. New soles. A man who drove more than he walked. He had a phone face down on the table, and a folded paper he kept squaring against the edge like it bothered him to see it crooked. You take reservations? He asked. For 6 or more. Big parties. He smiled at the salt shaker. You get a lot of those? Not lately. He nodded, like she'd confirmed something. He left before the water sweated a ring. No tip. He didn't touch the glass. She watched the black car fold into traffic, and she went to the register, and she pulled the card with the 1 number on it, and she dialed. Min Jae answered on the second ring. Yes. A man just measured my dining room with his eyes, she said. Asked about big parties, didn't drink his water. A pause on the line. Not surprise, calculation. Coat or no coat? Coat, new shoes. That's an appraiser, Min Jae said. He wasn't looking at your tables. He was counting your square footage. A breath. Don't rent to anyone. Don't sign anything. Even a napkin. I don't sign napkins. Simone. Her name in his mouth was careful, like he'd practiced saying it plain. There will be more of them. They come in a weak wave before an assembly. Write down every one. What they asked, what they touched. He paused. Can you do that? I already am. She hung up before he could make it a longer conversation, because a longer conversation was a thing you owed somebody, and she wasn't owing this man a minute more than the deal named. Malik came out of the kitchen wiping his hands. That the appraiser guy? You heard. I hear everything from the pass. He set a legal pad on the counter, already half filled with his small square handwriting. I started a log, time in, time out, what they say. You want it? I got it. And there it was, Malik with a pad and columns, doing to strangers what he did to invoices. She looked at the columns. Date, name given, table, notes. He'd already ruled a line down the middle with a ruler. Keep it under the register, she said. Next to the card. Sunday, the old man with the dog came for his catfish, and between him and closing 3 more strangers passed through, and every one of them did the same trick with their eyes. One asked about the building next door. One asked, real casual, whether the block ever flooded. One walked to the back hallway toward the bathrooms and stood too long by the door that opened on the alley, and when Malik followed him back there, the man said he'd taken a wrong turn and left without using anything at all. Malik logged all 3. He drew a little star next to the alley man. Monday brought 2 more. A woman this time, first woman they'd sent, in a gray coat with a clipboard she never wrote on, who asked whether the gas line was original to the building, and whether the basement flooded, and whether the wall shared with the shop next door was load-bearing. Simone answered none of it straight. She said she'd have to check. The woman smiled and said, "Don't trouble yourself," and left a card that said nothing but a name and a cell number, no company, no title. Malik ran the number against 3 search sites while the woman's heels were still clicking down Maple. It came back to a registered agent, the kind of address that's really a mailbox in a building full of mailboxes. Same mailbox as the appraiser's shoes, Malik muttered, though he couldn't have known that, and Simone let it go because the shape of the thing was right, even if the detail was a guess. The second Monday man didn't come inside at all. He stood across the street for 11 minutes. Malik timed him. 11. Same as the long car had waited on Friday, and he photographed the front of the restaurant, then the roofline, then the 2 buildings on either side, panning slow, like a man building a picture he'd stitch together later. Then he crossed and photographed the alley mouth. Then he was gone. He's not shooting the restaurant, Malik said, watching from the pass. He's shooting the whole run of it, curb to curb. He wrote it in the log. He drew another star. 5 strangers in 3 days, and not one of them had eaten a thing. They're not coming for the food, he said. No, they're coming for the doors. He tapped the star. Every one of them checks a door. Front, back, the one to next door. It's like they're, I don't know, mapping how you'd walk through if the walls weren't there. Simone stood very still. If the walls weren't there, she went to the closet office. She hadn't opened the bottom drawer of the desk since the funeral, because the bottom drawer was her mother's, and some drawers you leave shut. She opened it now, under the spare menus, and a box of birthday candles, and a dead calculator was the book, Evelyn's reservation book. Not the register, not the ledger son he would have kept. This was the fat green cloth book her mother wrote every booking in by hand for 22 years, because Evelyn didn't trust a screen to remember a person. Simone set it on the desk. The spine cracked when it opened. Her mother's handwriting climbed up the margins, wide and looping, the same hand as the EC on the back of the watch. She turned pages, anniversaries, birthdays, a wide slanted note in the margin of a Tuesday 4 years back. Mr. Pock, no onions, wife's knee bad, save the booth. Another reverend party of 9, folding table, extra sweet tea, banal. The bones of a life spent feeding people who came back. Malik leaned in the doorway. What are we looking for? I don't know yet. She turned another page and stopped. It wasn't a name. In the far margin, next to a Thursday 2 years and change ago, her mother had written a string that wasn't a booking at all. A date, a time, and then 3 letters and 4 numbers. CGV 4471, circled twice. That's not a reservation, Malik said. No. She flipped forward. 3 pages on, another one. Different date, same shape. CGV-2209, circled twice, then another, and another. Scattered through 2 years of onions and knees and sweet tea, her mother had tucked these little circled codes like she was hiding them in plain sight, inside the most boring book in the world. Simone's mouth went dry. She was writing something down, or copying it. Malik pulled the book toward him, careful, like it might tear. Look at the pen. The bookings are ballpoint. These circles are all the same felt tip. Same pen every time. She kept 1 pen for these. He looked up. Your mom kept a special pen to write these in a book nobody would ever read. Ayo. The back of Simone's neck went cold and then hot. What's CGV? Malik said, half to himself. He pulled his phone. He typed. He frowned. He typed again. It's not a phone thing. It's not a… Hold on. His thumbs moved. CGV. It's a container prefix. Shipping. Those 4 numbers, that's a container serial. Or part of one. He turned the phone so she could see the search. These are cargo codes, Simone. Your mother was writing down cargo container numbers. The restaurant was silent around them. Out front, the old man's dog barked once at nothing and settled. Why would my mother, Simone started, and didn't finish. Because the why was already crawling up out of the drawer at her. Malik was already moving. He had the laptop out of his backpack and open on the desk before she'd finished not asking. Port records are public, some of them. Manifests, birth schedules, the stuff the harbor authority posts. If these are real container numbers, I can maybe… His fingers stopped. Wait. What's the harbor sheet even? Your mom never went near a port in her life. The block does, Simone said slowly. We're 8 blocks from the freight yards. The trucks come through Maple at 4 in the morning. Mama opened at 4:15. She heard her own voice go strange. She stood at that window every morning at 4 and watched the trucks. Malik looked at her and wrote down what she saw. He typed. The old laptop wheezed. He pulled up a harbor authority page, ugly and gray, a government table with a search box. He keyed the first code, CGV 4471, enter. Nothing for a second. The wheel spun, then a row loaded. Okay, Malik breathed. Okay, it's real. Container CGV 4471, discharged. That's the date it came off the ship. Matches the date in the book almost. Off by a day. He scrolled. Consignees blanked out. Shell Company, Hanul Holdings LLC. He kept scrolling. Destination Bonded Warehouse. And then… He stopped. And then what? And then nothing. It's supposed to leave the bonded warehouse and go somewhere. Get delivered. And there's a line for it. It's blank. The container came in and it never officially went anywhere. He keyed the second code. CGV-2209. Same thing. Consignee Hanul Holdings. Came in, never left. He did the third, the fourth. His face changed with each one, the way a face changes when a joke stops being funny. Every one of these, he said. Every code your mom circled. Same shell, comes into the port, goes to a bonded warehouse, and disappears off the public record. She was tracking ghost containers. He sat back. Malia, why would a woman who fried catfish for a living be tracking cargo that vanishes? Simone reached past him and turned the book back to the first circled code. She looked at the date. Then she looked at the little card taped under the register in her mind. No, at the file, at what Minjae had said. The note. Sold 4 times. Whoever buys a debt they don't want the money on wants the address. When did the notice start? She said. The first one. Not the Mireille letter. The first one. Somebody came sniffing around Mama about the building. When? Malik went quiet. Couple years back. She never talked about it much. There was a man. I was new. I remember he came in twice. Real polite. Offered to buy the place. Said he'd keep the name. She said no, and he stopped coming. 2 years back. Simone put her finger on the first circled date. That's when the ghost containers start. The two of them looked at each other across the little desk in the little closet, where her mother used to count the drawer. And neither one of them said the thing yet, because saying it made it a wall you had to climb. Simone said it anyway. She wasn't tracking cargo, she was tracking the reason they wanted her block. Malik pulled the harbor page back up. He clicked the blanked consignee. He couldn't get a name, but he could get a berth. Every one of these containers came in at the same berth, same one. He copied the berth number, opened a new tab, searched it against the public leasing filings the harbor posted every quarter, the boring PDFs nobody read. While the page loaded, Simone kept turning the green book, and the more she turned it, the clearer the method got. Her mother hadn't circled at random. The codes clustered. Weeks with 3 or 4 of them, then a month with none, then a burst again, and every cluster sat around the same days of the week, the deep dark hours, Tuesday into Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Evelyn had learned the schedule. She'd figured out which nights the ghost trucks ran, and she'd stationed herself at that window on those nights. 4:15, coffee going cold, and she'd copied the sides of the containers as they made the turn, under the one streetlight on Maple that actually worked. She wasn't guessing, Simone said. She knew when to look. She learned their calendar. That's, Simone, that's months of nights. Malik's thumb hovered over the page. That's a woman standing at a window in the cold on purpose, over and over, writing down license plates on the ocean. That's my mother. Simone's throat worked once. She kept turning. The birth lease loaded. A scanned document, a signature at the bottom, a company name at the top. Cheongryong, Malik read. The word sat in the room. Cheongryong Freight and Bonded Storage, he read on. Long-term birth lease. That's the operator. That's who moves these boxes off the water and into the warehouses. He scrolled to the signature block and stopped scrolling, because at the bottom of a public harbor lease, next to a berth nobody thought about, was a name in printed capitals under an antique-looking signature. Kung Dae-sung. Simone did not sit down, because there wasn't a second chair, but her hand found the edge of the desk and held it. That's his father, she said. Min Jae's father. That's the man who wants your block. Malik's voice had dropped to almost nothing, and he already owns the port operation 8 blocks away. For a long moment, neither of them moved, and the only sound was the wheeze of the laptop fan. Then the pieces went together, and they went together fast, the way they do once the first one seats. Simone standing there watching them lock. The port. The ghost containers coming in under a shell and disappearing off the record because they weren't supposed to be traced. The birth Dae-sung controlled, and 8 blocks of the city between the water and his warehouses, 8 blocks of streets that had stoplights and pedestrians, and a fried catfish restaurant that opened at 4:15, right where the trucks turned on Maple. He's not clearing the block to build something, Simone said. He's clearing the block to drive through it. Malik looked up. A road, she said. His own road, from the water to his warehouses. Private, no lights. No harbor authority looking at what's on the trucks at 4 in the morning. If he owns every deed on this block, he owns the ground the trucks roll over. His containers come off the ship at his berth and go straight up his own street to his own warehouse, and nobody with a badge ever sees them. Her voice was climbing, and she pulled it back down. Chongryong isn't just a birth, it's the mouth of it. This block is the throat. Malik was already nodding, already pulling the map up, already seeing it. That's why the note got sold 4 times, till it landed with somebody who wanted the address. That's why the appraiser counted your square footage instead of asking about the food. It's not a restaurant to them. He stopped. It's a piece of road. My mother figured it out. Simone turned the book back a page, and another, looking at 2 years of circles in a special pen. She stood at that window every morning, and she watched trucks that weren't supposed to be there, and she wrote down the numbers, and she hid them in the reservation book, because who's ever going to read a reservation book? Her thumb moved over Mr. Pak. No onions, wife's knee bad. She was building a case, in a book about sweet tea. Did she know whose it was? Simone flipped to the last circled code. It was newer, months before Evelyn died, and this time, her mother hadn't just written the code. Next to it, small and pressed hard enough to dent the page, she'd written 3 words. They want everything. Simone read it out loud. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised her. She'd have bet it would shake. She knew, Simone said. She didn't know the name. But she knew they wanted everything, and she knew it was worth writing down, and she never told me because... She stopped. The because was too big for the closet. Malik closed the laptop halfway, gentle. Because you were nursing her and running the floor, and she wasn't gonna put this on you too. I go. Simone pressed the heel of her hand flat against the book and stood there a second, breathing through the tick of the watch on her chest, the way she'd learned to when a thing got too heavy to carry standing up. Then she straightened. Copy all of it. Every code, every date, every page with a circle. Photograph it. Back it up somewhere that isn't this building. She was moving now, and moving felt better than standing. If they'd take a restaurant for a road, they'd take a book for a match. Malik had his phone out, already shooting the pages. You calling him? She looked at the card in her mind. The 1 number, no name. Here was the thing she turned over, while Malik's phone clicked. Min Jae had come to her table and offered to erase the debt and walk away. He'd known about the note. He'd known his father wanted the block. And she had thought, everyone had thought, that this was a story about a mafia son and a fight over a vote in a wood-paneled room. It wasn't. The vote was small. The vote was a lid. Under the lid was a road her mother had seen at 4 in the morning and traced, box by box, into a green cloth book, 2 years before anybody sent a letter. This wasn't about who ran a family. This was about a mile of asphalt Dae-sung was building through people's lives, and Simone's mother had already caught him. She picked up the card. She dialed the 1 number. He answered on the first ring this time. Simone. I need you to tell me the truth about one thing, she said. And remember the 3rd condition. A beat. Ask. Chongryong. She said it clean, the way her mother must have practiced the numbers before she wrote them down. Your father's birth at the port. The lease with his name on it. The line was quiet for so long she checked the phone hadn't dropped. Where did you get that word? Min Jae said. And for the first time since he'd folded himself into the bad chair at table 4, he didn't sound like a man 3 moves ahead. He sounded like a man who'd just heard a door open in a house he thought was empty. You said no lies, Simone said. So, is Chongryong the reason he wants my block? Yes or no? She heard him breathe. She heard, faint, the sound of him setting something down, a glass maybe, turned and never drunk. Yes, Kang Min Jae said, but you shouldn't know that word. Nobody outside 4 people should know that word. A pause, and something entered his voice she hadn't heard from him before. Not in the Mugunghwa room, not across her own table. Simone, who told you Chongryong? She looked at the book. She looked at her mother's hand, pressed hard into the page. They want everything. My mother did, she said, 2 years ago. She just didn't tell me till tonight. And she hung up, and she set the card on the desk beside the green book. And outside, the black cars had not come back yet, but she knew now, standing in her mother's closet with the drawer open, that they would. The produce truck did not turn onto Maple at 6, the way it had for 22 years. Simone stood in the open back door with the empty crates stacked and waiting, and she watched the corner, and the corner stayed empty. She called the dispatcher. She got a voice she didn't know. "Accounts on hold," the voice said. "Payment flag. Try your rep." Her rep didn't pick up. Her rep's line rang 4 times and went to a mailbox that was full. She called the fish house next, because Wednesday was catfish, and the old man with the dog came Wednesdays, and the fish house was a family thing. 16 years of Friday envelopes, and a standing order that never once needed a phone call. The son answered. He was quiet for a second too long. "Simone," he said, "we can't run your line right now." She asked why. "Something came down," he said. "On the account. I don't. I'm sorry. Cash at the counter. You want it, but the lines froze." Froze. Same word. 2 suppliers. One morning, the same word out of 2 mouths that had never coordinated a thing in their lives. Malik came in at 7 with his backpack and read her face before she said anything. He set the bag down slow, the way you set a thing down when you already know the morning's gone wrong. "Which one?" he said. "Both," she said. "Produce and fish. Line's dead. They're saying payment flag." He set the laptop on the counter and started pulling up the vendor portals, and Simone went to the register and lifted the corner where the card sat under the metal lip. The 1 number, no name. She held it in her hand. She did not call it. Not yet. She wanted to know what she was calling about first, because a woman who called that number every time the floor tilted was a woman who'd handed her floor to somebody else. By 8, Malik had it. 4 accounts: produce, fish, the linen service, the grease haul. All 4 flagged inside a 90-minute window the night before. Not closed. Frozen. "Somebody didn't cancel you," Malik said. "Somebody put a hold on everybody who touches this building. You don't do that from a laptop. You do that when you know people." "He knows people," Simone said. She didn't have to say which he. Kang Dae-sung had never set foot in the Carter's table, and he had reached into it and turned off the water without touching the tap. The old man with the dog came at 11:30 for a catfish plate that didn't exist. Simone made him eggs. She made him eggs and greens, and told him the fryer was down, and he ate the eggs and left $3, and the dog thumped its tail against the table leg, and Simone stood at the window and watched him go and felt the second thing start before she knew it was a thing. It came in through the 2-top by the door. A woman she half knew ran the alterations place on the next block, came in for coffee and sat and didn't drink it, and finally said it the way people say the thing they came to say. "I'm not one to talk," the woman said, "so I won't. But you should know what's going around." "Going around where?" Simone said. "Around." The woman turned her cup a quarter turn. "That you've got a man, a Korean man, money, that the reason you're not selling this place and not paying what you owe is you've got a arrangement." She wouldn't look up. "That he comes here after close. That's the word. I told them I never saw a car, but you know how it moves." Simone knew how it moved. She'd grown up 2 blocks from here. A thing like that didn't need a car to be seen. It needed one mouth in a church basement and a week. She kept her hands flat on the counter and thanked the woman for telling her, and the woman left the coffee, and when the door shut, Simone stood very still and did the arithmetic out loud in her head, the ugly, clean shape of it. Freeze the accounts so the restaurant chokes. Float the rumor so when she reaches for help, nobody reputable reaches back, and the only hand left is the exact hand the rumor names. Daesung wasn't trying to close her. He was trying to make her a story her own block wouldn't touch, so that when she fell, there'd be nobody standing near enough to catch a thing. "I go," she said, once, under her breath, and that was all. Malik heard the whole shape of it in her face. "That's him too," he said. "The talk. That's him too." She picked up the card. This time she called. Min-jae answered on the second ring, and she gave it to him plain. 4 accounts frozen overnight, a rumor walking the block with his face in it, and she wanted to know if he knew before she called or after. "After," he said, and there was something under the word, a stillness that a liar doesn't bother with. "I'm finding out with you." He asked her to hold the number and not call anyone else and give him 2 hours. "You've got till the fryer's cold," she said, and hung up, because 2 hours from a man who could turn off her water was a lifetime she wasn't handing over on faith. He didn't take 2 hours. He came in 50 minutes, alone, cars a block back like the terms said, and he came in through the front and stood inside the door and looked at the empty crates through the pass and the coffee going cold on the 2 top, and for the first time since the Mugunghwa room, he looked like a man who'd walked into a thing already lost. "He moved on the accounts through the Merchants Association," Min-jae said. "It's legal. It's paper. He calls it a review. It freezes for 30 days while they review, and 30 days is all he needs." He set his keyring on the counter without being asked to, a small motion, a man emptying his hands. "The talk I can't unmake. I'm sorry. I don't want sorry. I want the truth you owe me by Wednesday." She came around the counter. "2 things, and don't dress either one. Did you touch my note?" He didn't answer fast enough. She'd have taken a fast no. A fast no was the whole architecture of the last 11 days, the one wall she'd built the arrangement on. He didn't give her a fast no. He looked at the keyring on the counter like it belonged to somebody else, and Malik went still at the laptop, and the fryer ticked as it cooled, and Simone felt the floor she'd been so careful about begin to go. "Say it," she said. "6 days ago," Min-jae said, "I bought the note." The room did a thing. Not loud, the opposite of loud. "You bought it. Through a fund, not my name on it. A fund 3 names deep, so my father couldn't see it was me, and move it out of reach before. You bought my note." She heard her own voice go flat and even, the waitress voice, the one that never dropped a plate. "The second thing you swore, number 2 of 3. Alone, hands off the note, no lies. You said them back to me in this room. You put your hand up." She wasn't shouting. She'd never once in her life gotten what she needed by shouting. You did the exact thing. To keep it away from him, he didn't step toward her. He had the sense not to. "Simone, if the collection runs, he takes the building at the sale, and there is no assembly, no witness, no case. It's over the day before it starts. I moved it into a fund he can't reach, so that when this is done, it goes back clean. I was going to tell you after. I bought it to protect it. You bought it because a man like you can't sit in a room and not own the thing that scares him." She said it quiet. "You don't get to decide, 6 days deep, in the dark, that my floor is safer in your hands than mine. That's not protecting it. That's the same move your father just made on my suppliers. You froze 1 thing, he froze 4. It's the same hand, Min-jae. It's just yours." He took that. He took it standing and said nothing, because there wasn't a true thing to say against it, and he'd sworn not to say a false one. "Second question," she said, and now her voice did drop, not from anger, from somewhere colder and lower. "My mother. Did your father ever go near my mother?" And there it was. She watched it land on him before he opened his mouth. She'd learned faces across a dining room for 6 years. learned which tables were about to walk on the check and which were about to cry into the dessert, and she watched Kang Min-jae's face do the thing a face does when the question it dreaded most arrives dressed as the small one. "You knew," she said. "You've known the whole time." "Simone." "When?" She put her hand flat on the counter again. The same spot, the wood-worn pail where 22 years of hands had landed. "When did he go near her?" "And you tell me straight, because if you fold this too, I've got nothing left of you to keep." Min-jae was quiet for a long moment. Then he told her, and he told her fast. "The way you pull a thing out when leaving it in kills slower." 2 years ago, he said, the man who came to buy the restaurant, the polite one, kept the name. That was my father's man. Your mother said no. She said no twice. The third time my father went himself. He didn't threaten her the way the movies do it. He told her he'd bought her supplier lines and her landlord's mortgage and the note on the freezer, and that she could keep saying no as long as she liked, and one morning she'd open the door and none of it would work, and she'd sell to him for less than he was offering that day. He told her he was patient. He told her he'd outlive her patience. Min-jae's jaw moved. She had the diagnosis by then. He knew it. He said he'd outlive her patience to a woman he knew was dying, and he meant her daughter. The fryer ticked. Outside, a car went by that wasn't one of theirs. Simone did not sit down, though her legs wanted the chair. She stayed standing, because Evelyn had taught her that a woman takes the worst news on her feet, and she made herself hear all of it, every clause, the patient part, and the outlive part, and the daughter part, and she filed each one where it would stay. "He meant me," Simone said. "He meant whoever came after her. He always meant the block. Your mother understood that. That's why she never told you what she was building in that book. She was building it for the person who'd have to say no when she couldn't anymore." Min-jae looked at the green book, still on the desk through the office door. "She was building it for you." Simone stood there and felt the whole shape of the last 2 years rearrange itself, and it did not make her cry, because Evelyn Carter had raised her not to give a man like Dae-sung the water for it. What it did was quieter and worse. It made her understand that the man across the counter had known, every day of this arrangement, that his father had stood in this room and told her dying mother he'd wait her out, and had sat at her wobbly table and drunk her coffee and let her set 3 conditions and never once said it. "You watched me not know," she said. 11 days. You watched me put my mother's watch on every morning, and you knew your father told her she'd die, and he'd still win, and you let me build a partnership on not knowing. If I'd told you day one, you'd never have let me in the door." That was mine to decide. Her voice cracked once, one hair, and she pulled it flat again. "Not yours. That was the whole point of the 3 things. You don't get to run the parts of my own life you think I can't carry. My mother didn't get to. She thought she was protecting me, and all she did was leave me to find it alone in a drawer. And now you." She shook her head, slow. "You people, you all love me quietest, right when I need you loud." Min-jae reached, not for her, for the key ring, to take it back off the counter, and she put 2 fingers on it first. "Leave it," she said. He stopped. Simone went to the register and lifted the corner and pulled the card out from under the metal lip. The one number, no name, that she'd pinned there in the light, so Malik would always see it wasn't a secret. She set it on the counter next to his keys. Then she opened the separate drawer, the one where the $50 bill had sat for 11 days, waiting to be a thing she gave back, and she laid the 50 on top of the card, squared, the way you square a check you're returning. "Take your number," she said. "Take your 50. Take whatever funds got my mother's floor in it, and you undo it. Clean, the way you swore you would, and you send me the paper that says it's back where it was before you touched it. That's the last thing I'll ask you for." She pushed the small stack an inch toward him. "The arrangement's done. You broke 2 of 3. I told you the first lie, and I'd walk. This is worse than a lie, so I'm walking." "The assembly's in 6 days. He didn't raise his voice either. That was the terrible thing about him. He matched her all the way down. Without you in that room, there's no witness. He removes me, and then there's nobody between your block and the corridor. You end this, and you don't just lose me. You lose the only vote that stops him. Then he wins something." She held his eyes. "He doesn't get to win it by making me a liar too. I'd rather lose the building honest than keep it as the 5th sale to the 5th man who decided what was good for me without asking. My mother spent her last 2 years being managed by your father. I'm not spending my first 2 being managed by his son. I'm not my father." "You bought the note in the dark and told me after. He froze the accounts in the dark and let me find out at 6. Convince me which part of that is a different man." She waited. "He had nothing, and he was honest enough not to invent it. That's what I thought." Malik hadn't moved from the laptop. He said, very low, not to interrupt, only so it existed in the room. "Simone, the accounts are still froze. We don't reopen Thursday. The health hold on the Friar's reel, and the sale dates. I know the date." She didn't look away from Min Jae. 9 days. 9 days, Malik said. She held it, and she let the numbers sit in the room where everyone could hear them. 9 days on the note, 6 on the assembly, a frozen line to every supplier that fed the room. A roomer walking the block with her name lashed to the face of the man standing in front of her, and she took the man's keys and his card and his 50 and moved them 1 more inch across the counter into the space that was his side now, and she said the last of it in the even voice her mother gave her. "Pick them up and go, Min Jae. Send the paper. Don't come back through that door, unless it's as a man who bought a plate of catfish and paid for it and left. Like anybody. You want to be in this room again. You earn it the way the old man with the dog earned it. 9 years and a tip, not 1 night and a fund." He looked at her a long time. Then he picked up the keys and the card, and he left the 50 where it sat, the one thing he wouldn't take back, and she'd fight him on that later, but not now. He walked to the door and put his hand on it, and turned, halfway, the way he'd turned in the Mugunghwa room when he told her nothing happened in that room tonight. "She was right about the book," he said. "Whatever else you decide about me, finish the book. It's the only thing in this that's still true." Then the door with the open sign swung shut behind him, and the bell rang once, and the black cars pulled off the corner a block down, and the carter's table was quiet, the way it hadn't been quiet since the produce truck failed to come. Simone stood in the middle of the empty dining room with 4 dead accounts and 6 days and 9 days and a roomer and no partner, and she picked up the cold coffee off the 2-top and poured it out, and she washed the cup and she dried it, and she set it back on the shelf. Her hands were steady. She made them be steady. "Get the book," she said to Malik. He looked up, and he held her eyes a second, and then he closed the laptop and went to the office without a word. He can't touch it now. Good. It was never his, and it was never his father's, and it stopped being anybody's the day she wrote 3 words in the margin and left it in a drawer for me. She untied the apron and checked the watch against the wall clock the way she did every day of her life, and for the first time in 11 days, the 2 of them didn't agree. The wall clock said 1/4 and her mother's watch, the second hand hitched on the 11 and stuck, said nothing at all. It had stopped. Sometime that morning, between the truck that didn't come and the man who did, Evelyn Carter's watch had wound down and stopped, and Simone stood there holding a dead watch in a dining room full of dead accounts, and understood that whatever she was going to do now, she was going to do it on her own time, because her mother's had finally run out. She pinned the stopwatch back over her heart anyway. She turned the sign to closed, and she carried the green book to the counter, opened it to the first circled code, and said, "Show me how the numbers move. All of them. We've got 6 days and no witness, and I'm done waiting on men to save this. We're going to finish what she started." Malik pulled a chair to the counter and spread the green book flat under the register light. Simone put her finger on the first circled code and read the number out loud. He wrote it on a fresh legal pad, then the second, then the third. 6 days. No truck coming. A sanitary hold on a cold fryer. They worked anyway. For an hour, the numbers went nowhere. Container serials, birth logs, the shell names, all of it already mapped. Malik kept saying the containers were the road and the road was proven. But the road wasn't the case. The road was Dae Sung's. What Simone needed was hers and her mother's. "Table numbers," Malik said, and stopped writing. Simone looked at him. He flipped back 3 pages. Beside every circled container code, in the far margin, Evelyn had written a small number. A 1, a 7, a 4. Simone had read them as table assignments for the reservations on that line. A party of 6, table 4. Nobody looked twice at a waitress noting which table a party sat. "They're not tables," Malik said. "There's no table 14 in here. You've got 12. Simone counted the room out of habit. 12 tops. Always 12. Her mother had run 12 tables for 22 years. The number in the margin next to CGV 4471 was a 19. "So what's 19? She said. Malik pulled his laptop up and typed. The county parcel viewer loaded slow. He entered the block, the assessor's map, and the lots came up as little stamped rectangles with numbers on them. Lot 19 sat 2 doors down, the shuttered dry cleaner. Lot 4 was the corner grocery. Lot 7 was the tailor's shop where the woman with the boato worked. Lot 12 was Carter's table. Simone felt it land in her chest before her head caught up. Her mother hadn't been logging tables. She'd been logging deeds. She sat down on the wobbly chair from table 4 without meaning to. 22 years her mother had written in this book, in a hand Simone knew better than her own, and Simone had carried the thing to the counter twice already and read every line as a woman keeping a busy floor. A party of 6, table 4. A joint of catfish, no cibola, table 1. She'd read grief into it and missed the map. Her mother had hidden a war inside a grocery list, and hidden it there because a grocery list was the one thing nobody powerful ever bothered to read. She made it boring on purpose, Simone said. She made it invisible, Malik said. Every code, Malik said, running his finger down the margin. She tied a container night to a lot. She wasn't just watching the trucks. She was watching which doors on this block went dark right before a truck ran clean. I go, Simone said, once. Low. Because that was the whole thing. That was what the appraisers had been checking. Not square footage, doors. Which door connected to which. Evelyn had figured out 2 years ago that the corridor didn't need every building the same way. It needed a straight line. And a straight line through a city block meant certain lots had to go dark on schedule, in order, each one signed away by a scared owner who thought they were selling one shop and not a piece of a road. Malik was already pulling the recorder log against the parcel dates. Lot 19 went to a shell in March. A ghost container ran 3 nights later. Lot 4's owner got a review freeze in April. The truck ran the week the account thawed after he agreed to sell. Every lot on the block had a container night sitting next to the day the pressure hit it. She built a timeline, Simone said. Truck, freeze. Sale, truck, every lot. And a witness, Malik said. He turned the book so she could see. Beside each margin number, Evelyn had drawn a tiny second mark, a set of initials, cramped, different ones each time, not her own. She wrote down who else saw the truck. Look, SC, next to this one. That's not you, and it's not her. Simone didn't know an SC on the block. Then she did. She left the register, crossed to the phone, and called the tailor first, because the tailor was the one who'd carried Dae-sung's rumor through her door. The woman didn't want to talk. Simone told her one thing, that the man behind the rumor was the same man freezing her linen account and the same man who'd take her lot next, and asked her to come look at a book. The woman hung up. 20 minutes later, she came through the door with her coat still buttoned. Her name was Sun-hee Choi. 58, small, an old sales ledger under her arm, and a camellia-shaped brooch on a lavender cardigan. She'd run the tailor's shop on Lot 7 for 30 years. She put the ledger on the counter next to Evelyn's book and opened it to a page she'd folded down herself, months back, and never shown anyone. Your mother asked me to write the nights I couldn't sleep, Sun-hee said. The trucks woke me. She said keep the dates. She said one day someone would need 2 people who saw the same thing, not one woman they could call a liar. Simone put the 2 books side by side. Sun-hee's dates matched the margins. The SC was her. Every ghost container that ran past Lot 7, an old woman 2 doors down had lain awake and written the hour. Evelyn had known, 2 years out, exactly what the assembly would demand. Not a story, a chain. 2 witnesses to each link, independent, with the paper to prove neither had copied the other. She was building a case, Sun-hee said, for the day she wouldn't be here. She looked at Simone. You have her eyes when you're angry. Sun-hee turned a page in her own ledger and touched a line near the bottom. She told me not to trust the sun, she said, the one with the dragon. She said the father sends the son when he wants a thing to look kind. She closed the ledger. But your mother also said, watch what a man undoes, not what he says. So watch him. Simone said nothing to that. She wrote it down. They worked till the streetlights came on. Malik called 2 more owners off the block. The grocer's son on Lot 4, a retired teacher who'd kept receipts on Lot 19, and both of them, once they understood the freeze on their accounts and the corridor under their floors were the same hand, open drawers they'd kept shut. By midnight, the counter held 5 ledgers, a legal pad, a laptop, and Evelyn's green book at the center of it, and every circled code had a lot, a date, a truck, and 2 names beside it. It was a case, a real one, not Min-jae's, not the recordings he kept. Hers, built from a reservation book and a tailor's insomnia. The phone rang at midnight. Simone let it ring twice, then answered. The fund is undone, Min-jae said. No greeting. I moved your note out of it this afternoon. It's in a judicial deposit now. A court holds it. Not me, not a shell. You'll get the paper in the morning. I can't touch it, and neither can he. Simone held the phone and looked at the 5 ledgers. There's more, he said. I filed to renounce the property claim. Every deed the family holds on your block. I signed them into the same court file. If the assembly removes me, they can't use my name to take 1 door on that street. A pause. And I'm sending you the records. All of it. What my father ordered, dated, in his voice. Park Jun-ho kept them. They're yours to bring, not mine. She should have felt something soften. She didn't, not yet. Why now? Because you were right, he said. I decided what was safe for you in the dark. That's his move. I'm done making it. Another pause, longer. Finish the book. I'll be in the room. I won't speak unless you ask me to. She hung up without answering, but she wrote down what he'd said because it was information, and information was the case. The assembly came on the 6th day, in a paneled room 3 floors below, where a tired waitress had once fallen asleep on the wrong shoulder. Simone wore her mother's watch on the outside of her wrist for the first time. Stopped, the second hand frozen at 11, and she wore it anyway. She carried Evelyn's green book. Sun-hee walked in beside her with her ledger and her brooch. The grocer's son came. The teacher came. Malik came with the laptop and every parcel date backed up in 3 places. Dae-sung sat at the head of a long table in a charcoal 3-piece suit, the antique signet ring on his hand, and he looked at the black woman with the cloth book and did not stand. The advisors filled the chairs. Ha was there. Seo Taewon sat 2 down with his leather case and his 2 phones, and when his eyes found Simone he took his glasses off and cleaned them, which was the only thing his hands did for the next hour. Ha opened the motion to remove Min-jae. He read it this time, all the way through. The failure of leadership, the suspended vote, the son unfit. He read it well. When he finished, he asked if anyone spoke for Kang Min-jae before the count. Min-jae stood. She does, he said, and sat back down, and put his hands flat on the table, where everyone could see them, and said nothing else. Simone stayed in her chair a moment. Then she stood and put the green book on the table and opened it to the first circled code. She didn't make a speech. She'd watched men make speeches. She made a chain. Lot 19, she said. March. Sold to a company that is 3 names deep, a company owned by the man at the head of this table. 3 nights later, a container my mother wrote down here. She turned the book, ran through a berth, leased to that same man, and disappeared off the public record. 2 people saw the truck. My mother and her. She nodded at Sun-hee, who stood, opened her ledger to the folded page, and read the date and the hour in a steady voice, and sat down. Lot 4, Simone said, and did it again. The grocer's son stood, read his date, sat. Lot 7. Sun-hee's own shop. Frozen linen account last week. A rumor about me last week. A container the same night my account froze. She looked at Dae-sung for the first time. You ran a truck the night you tried to make this block hate me. Dae-sung's face held. But the advisor beside him shifted, and the one beside that one looked at the table. She went lot by lot. 19, 4, 7, 12. Each one a truck, a freeze, a sale, 2 names. She never raised her voice. She never used the word corridor. She let 12 owners' worth of doors going dark in a straight line say it for her. And by the 8th lot, every man in the room was doing the same arithmetic her mother had done at a window at 4 in the morning, and the answer was a private road through their block that would have made every one of them a witness to a crime after the fact. The teacher stood for lot 19 and read from a receipt book, her voice cracking once and holding. The grocer's son laid his father's freeze notice flat on the table so the date faced the men who'd signed it. Nobody in the room had prepared for owners. They had prepared for a boss's son and a story they could call a lie. They had not prepared for 5 people from 1 block with 5 sets of paper that agreed with each other and with a dead woman's handwriting. I'm not asking you to believe me, Simone said. I'm asking you to believe her. She put 2 fingers on the green book, and her, and him, and them. Count how many of us saw the same truck, then decide which one of us is the liar. Ha looked at the book, and then at Dae-sung, and then at his own hands. Then Park Jun-ho, who had stood by the door in a black suit with an earpiece, stepped forward and set a small device on the table and pressed it once. Dae-sung's own voice came out of it, dated, naming the association review that would freeze the accounts, naming which lots to squeeze and in what order, naming, near the end, the restaurant on lot 12 and the woman who'd inherited it, and what it would take to outlast her the way he'd outlasted her mother. The room went very quiet. Ha closed the black book. He didn't need to be told to. Dae-sung spoke once. He said the recording was edited, The woman was Min-jae's mistress. The books were forgeries. He said it in the calm voice of a man who had ended arguments with that exact sentence for 30 years. It landed on nothing. The tailor's rumor had been his, and here in this room, with 2 witnesses to every truck, the word mistress came out of his mouth as the last card of a man who had already spent the deck. Seo Taewon took his glasses off again and did not put them back. The vote turned in 11 minutes. Simone counted them by the frozen watch on her wrist, because that was the only clock she trusted. 5 men who owed Dae-sung looked at the recording and the ledgers and voted to remove him instead, because a man about to be indicted is not a man you owe your future to. Seo Taewon voted last, and voted against Dae-sung, and put his glasses back on. Dae-sung lost the room he had owned for 30 years in under a quarter hour. They removed him. His accounts froze that night. His own review, his own machine, turned around. Junho's recordings went where recordings go. The court did the rest. The collection on Carter's table was annulled as fraudulent. A note bought 4 times to seize an address, tied by the judicial file to a corridor scheme, void. The building came back, not paid off, not gifted, annulled. The debt had never been honest, and the court said so on paper, and Simone framed neither the paper nor the $50 bill she finally spent. On produce, the morning the account thawed, cash on the counter, no favor owed to any hand. The frozen accounts came back one by one, the tailor's linen. The fish house. The produce truck rolled up at 6 on a Tuesday, and the driver acted like he'd never been gone. The sanitary hold on the fryer lifted the same week. Simone dropped the first basket of catfish in a month, and the smell brought the old man with the dog to the door before she'd flipped the sign. He left $3. She almost cried over $3 and didn't. The rumor died the way rumors die, quietly, replaced by the fact of a woman who'd stood in a paneled room and taken a boss apart with a reservation book. On the block they stopped saying the Korean man with money and started saying the girl who beat him. Seo Taewon never came back to table 9, and Simone never did tell anyone the false name he'd used, because she'd said she didn't do that. And a thing you keep when it costs you nothing is only worth what you keep when it costs you something. Sun-hee started coming Sundays for catfish and left a tip and stayed to talk. Her brooch on the same cardigan, her ledger retired to a drawer that no longer needed to hide. Weeks passed. Min-jae came back on an ordinary Thursday, alone, no cars on the corner, no men at the window. He wore no watch worth the name that day, or if he did, she didn't look for it. He sat at table 9, the window 2-top, where a man with a paper cup had once ordered tea with no sesame, and when Simone came with the menu, he ordered catfish and sweet tea, and paid at the end, and left more than the tea was worth, folded under the glass, the way the old man with the dog did, the way she'd told him to. 9 years and a tip, she'd said. Not 1 night and a fund. He was starting at year 1. He knew it. He came back the next week and started year 1 again. The catering launch was a Saturday. Simone had built it out of nothing, the banquet skill she'd carried across the city for 6 years, 40 blocks on foot with a champagne tray she never dropped, turned back now on her own name. Carter's Table Catering. The first event was in her own dining room, the 12 tables pushed to the walls, the block invited, Sun-hee's brooch catching the light, Malik running the numbers because the numbers were finally hers to run. The teacher came. The grocer's son came and brought his father, who shook Simone's hand for a long time and said nothing, which was everything. The old man came with the dog, and the dog got catfish under the table, and nobody stopped it. Evelyn's watch sat on the register, stopped at 11, and Simone had decided to leave it stopped. She'd taken it to the same repairman who'd fixed it twice before. And he'd offered to make it run again for nothing, and she'd told him no. Keep my time, her mother had said, and handed her the watch on her last shift. Simone understood the sentence now, the way she hadn't at 4 a.m. 14 months ago. Not run my time. Keep it. She was keeping it. The exact hour her mother had run out of, held still, on the counter of a restaurant that outlived the man who'd tried to take it. The time didn't have to move for the restaurant to. That was the difference her mother had been trying to hand her all along. Near the end of the night, the room thinned. Min Jae stayed, in the corner, out of the way, an ordinary guest who'd bought a plate. Simone finished the last tray, wiped her hands, and crossed the room. She didn't sit because a boss ordered a chair pushed out. She stood beside him a moment, watching her own dining room full of her own people, and then she leaned over and rested her head on his shoulder. Her choice. Nobody's vote, nobody's fund, nobody's favor. The first time she'd done it, she'd been asleep on her feet, unfed, 40 blocks in her legs, and it had cost her a season of her life. This time she was awake, and the room was hers, and the shoulder was one she'd made earn its way back, a plate of catfish at a time. Table 9, she said. No sesame, he said. And she left her head where it was, on the shoulder she'd fallen asleep on by accident once, and stayed there now, on purpose, in the light of the restaurant her mother built and she kept. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-Fam, have you ever poured your whole life into something someone else saw as just a piece of property to seize? Have you ever kept the small, ordinary notes of a person you lost, never knowing they held the truth that would save you? And when someone finally offered to fix it all for you, did you have the strength Simone had to say no, and win it back on your own terms? Mark my words, K-Fam, the ones who stay quiet are watching everything. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and justice, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel